Number 5. The Woman in Black. In Susan Hill's 1983 gothic horror novel, The Woman in Black, a lawyer named Arthur Kipps is called to a small town in England to settle the estate of Mrs. Alice Drablow, known as the Eel Marsh House. At Mrs. Drablow's funeral, he sees a mysterious woman in black who the local children seem equally concerned by. After some detective work and putting up with several appearances by the woman in black, Arthur discovers that she is the ghost of Mrs. Drablow's sister, Jeanette. She had a child out of wedlock who her sister adopted, but one day a carriage carrying the young boy sank in the marshes. Jeanette died soon after and began to haunt the house and the town as the Woman in Black, often appearing as a dark omen, meaning that the family that saw her would soon lose a child. The Woman in Black is a terrifying figure for both her tragic origin and the lengths she seems willing to go to for revenge. The story has been adapted for the stage, in the second longest running play in West End history, as well as a couple film adaptations, with the most recent one starring Daniel Radcliffe as Arthur. But it all started with one terrifying book. Here's an excerpt from the text for you to enjoy. The passage led only to 3 other bedrooms on either side, and one by one, regaining my nerve as I went, I opened them and looked inside each one. Nothing. Only heavy old furniture and empty unmade beds, and, in the rooms at the back of the house, moonlight. I reached the door at the very end of the passage. This was the door without a keyhole, the door I had been unable to open on my first visit. I had no idea what was beyond it, except the sound. It was coming from within that room. It was a sound of something bumping gently on the floor in a rhythmic sort of way. A familiar sort of sound, and yet one that I still could not exactly place. I steadied my now racing heart and reached for the door handle I knew to be locked. Then, from somewhere out of that howling darkness, came a cry to my ears, catapulting me back into the present and banishing all the courage I had summoned to reach for the locked door. I listened hard. Nothing. The tumult of the wind like a banshee, and the banging and rattling of the window in its old ill-fitting frame. Then yes, again, a cry. That familiar cry of desperation and anguish. A cry for help from a child somewhere out on the marsh. There was no child. I knew that. How could there be? Yet how could I stand here and ignore even the crying of some long-dead ghost? Rest in peace, I thought. But this poor one did not. Could not. After a few moments, I turned. I knew what I had to do. I would fetch the axe from downstairs and discover once and for all what was hiding in this locked room. As I ventured down the landing towards the stairs, Spider the dog following me at once, 2 things happened together. I had the impression of someone who had just that very second before gone past me on their way from the top of the stairs to one of the other rooms, and as a tremendous blast of wind hit the house so that it all but seemed to rock at the impact, the lights went out. I had not bothered to pick up my torch, and now I stood in the pitch blackness, unsure for a moment of my bearings. Number 4. Dracula. Dracula is such an enduring character in fiction to the point where he has become somewhat of a stock character, being parodied or diluted to the point where it can be difficult to remember how terrifying he really is. Appearing in the 1897 novel by Bram Stoker, Count Dracula is of course a vampire living in Transylvania who engages the services of a young solicitor named Jonathan Harker. The Count plans to make the move to England in order to find fresh prey, and is using Harker not only for the purpose of buying a home, but so that he can learn as much as he can about England before going. Because he has become the iconic vampire in the years since, it may surprise you to learn that he was a revolutionary new take on the creature when he was first created. Before Dracula's publication, vampires were usually portrayed as repulsive, corpse-like creatures, making the Count's handsomeness, as well as his veneer of charm and sophistication, all the more terrifying, as he could pass almost undetected and charm his way into your home in a way that classic vampires couldn't. In addition to his blood-sucking, Dracula possesses super strength equivalent to 20 men, the ability to cast hypnotic or illusionary spells. He can vanish and reappear at will, can command animals like bats, rats, and wolves, as well as transform into such creatures. As a vampire, he is of course very difficult to defeat, being unable to go into the sun without losing his powers. However, unlike later versions, the sun does not burn him to ash. He is defeated in the end of the novel by being decapitated by a knife, not by having a stake driven through his heart, as you may assume. Here's an excerpt from Dracula, where the Count interrupts his brides from feeding on Jonathan. I was conscious of the presence of the Count, and of his being as I lapped in a storm of fury. As my eyes opened involuntarily, I saw his strong hand grasp the slender neck of the fair woman, and with a giant's power draw it back. The blue eyes transformed with fury, the white teeth champing with rage, and the fair cheeks blazing red with passion. But the Count, never did I imagine such wrath and fury, even to the demons of the pit. His eyes were positively blazing. The red light in them was lurid, as if the flames of hellfire blazed behind them. His face was deathly pale and the lines of it were hard like drawn wires. The thick eyebrows that met over the nose now seemed like a heaving bar of white-hot metal. With a fierce sweep of his arm, he hurled the woman from him, and then motioned to the others as though he were beating them back. It was the same imperious gesture that I had seen used to the wolves. In a voice which, though low and almost in a whisper, seemed to cut through the air and then ring round the room, he said, "How dare you touch him, any of you? How dare you cast eyes on him when I had forbidden it? Back, I tell you all, this man belongs to me. Beware how you meddle with him, or you'll have to deal with me." "Are we to have nothing tonight?" said one of them in a low laugh, as she pointed to the bag which he had thrown upon the floor, and which moved as though there was some living thing within it. For answer, he nodded his head. One of the women jumped forward and opened it. If my ears did not deceive me, there was a gasp and a low wail, as of a half-smothered child. The woman closed round whilst I was aghast with horror, but as I looked they disappeared, and with them the dreadful bag. Number 3. Cthulhu. First appearing in a 1928 short story by H.P. Lovecraft, featured in the Weird Tales pulp magazine, in Call of Cthulhu, we learn that the creature is a malevolent entity who is imprisoned in hibernation in an underwater city in the South Pacific. He's the object of worship for many other Lovecraftian monsters, as well as the human cults appearing in his stories. He is said to be the source of constant subconscious anxiety for all of mankind, which, if true, makes me have a real bone or two to pick with this entity. Although currently trapped in hibernation, it is only a matter of time before he returns to claim the souls of humanity and reawaken the other great old ones, at which point he will reclaim the universe. The sight of the creature is enough to drive a man to madness, but descriptions are given by Lovecraft in the following passage from Call of Cthulhu. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. A mountain walked or stumbled. It seemed to be a sort of monster, or symbol representing a monster, of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings, but it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Number 2. The Headless Horseman. Variations of the Headless Horseman have appeared many times over the years, such as the demonic fairy in Irish myth known as the Dullahan, and is also similar to the elements from the Arthurian legend Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. But the version we will be looking at today is the Headless Horseman who appears in the 1820 short story The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. The Headless Horseman is said to be a Hessian trooper from the Revolutionary War whose head was taken off by a cannonball. He then began haunting the woods, looking for his head and attacking unsuspecting travelers. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow tells of Ichabod Crane, a schoolteacher trying to woo a farm girl at a party who comes across the horseman on his way home. The story is slightly ambiguous about whether the horseman is real or if it is Ichabod's romantic rival in disguise, but either way, the horseman has become an enduring figure in American literature. Here is a passage from the short story. "It was the witching time of night when Ichabod traveled homeward. All the ghost stories that he had ever heard over the years now came crowding upon his recollection. The night grew darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky. He had never felt so lonely. A splash by the side of a bridge caught his ear. In the dark shadow, he beheld something huge, misshapen, black and towering. The hair rose upon his head. He stammered, 'Who are you?' He received no reply. The shadowy object put itself in motion and bounded into the middle of the road. It appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions, mounted on a black horse of powerful frame. Ichabod quickened his steed in hopes of leaving the mysterious horseman behind. The stranger, however, quickened to an equal pace. The odd silence of Ichabod's companion was soon fearfully accounted for upon seeing his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height, and muffled in a cloak, Ichabod was horror-struck to perceive that he was headless, and that he carried his head before him on his saddle. In desperation, Ichabod rained kicks upon gunpowder. The spectre followed close behind. Away they dashed, stones flying. An opening in the trees now cheered him with the hope that the church bridge was at hand, the place where legend said the horseman should stop. Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuer would vanish. Instead, he saw the goblin rising up in his stirrups, in the very act of hurling his head at him. Ichabod tried to dodge the horrible missile, but too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He tumbled into the dust, and gunpowder and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning, the old horse was found quietly cropping grass at his master's gate. The students were assembled at the schoolhouse, but no schoolmaster arrived. The tracks of horses' hoofs, dented in the road, were traced to the bridge. On the bank was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close behind it, a shattered pumpkin. Number 1. It. The title antagonist of Stephen King's 1986 novel It is one of the most terrifying he's ever come up with, and that's saying a lot considering his output. It is an ancient evil, trans-dimensional entity that attacks the children of Derry, Maine every 27 years before hibernating until the next cycle. It has reality-altering powers, being able to change its victim's surroundings as well as its own appearance in order to take the shape of whatever its victim is most afraid of. Its true form is described as being similar to that of a giant spider, and it takes the forms of a few different creatures, such as a wolfman, a leper, and even a swarm of flying leeches, but one of its favorite forms to assume is that of Pennywise the dancing clown. In the following passage from the novel, one of the children, Ben, comes across Pennywise for the first time. The balloons still appeared to be floating towards him. It had to be a hallucination or a mirage brought on by some weird trick of the weather. There could be a man down there on the ice. He supposed it was even possible that he could be wearing a clown suit, but the balloons couldn't be floating towards Ben into the wind, yet that was just what they appeared to be doing. Ben! The clown on the ice called. Ben thought that voice was only in his mind, although it seemed to be heard with his ears. Want a balloon, Ben? There was something so evil in that voice, so awful, that Ben wanted to run away as fast as he could, but his feet seemed as welded to the sidewalk as the teeter-totters in the schoolyard were to the ground. They float, Ben! They all float. Try one and see. The clown began walking along the ice towards Canal Bridge where Ben stood. Ben watched him come, not moving. He watched as a bird watches an approaching snake. The balloons should have burst in the intense cold, but they did not. They floated above and ahead of the clown when they should have been streaming out behind him, trying to escape back into the barrens, where some part of Ben's mind assured him this creature had come from in the first place. Now Ben noticed something else. Although the last of daylight had struck a rosy glow across the ice of the canal, the clown cast no shadow. None at all.
Number 5. Art the Clown. First entry on this list is also one of the more recent stars to make this list, and will not be the only terrifying clown on this list. I tried to narrow it down to just one, but spooky clowns are just too popular. First up is Art the Clown from the Terrifier series. Art the Clown is a demonic clown possessing supernatural abilities to induce fear in his victims, a whole bag full of tricks, and a love of the game. He seems human at first. Keyword being seems. Probably what makes him so terrifying is you can tell he just loves what he does. Love what you do and you never work a day in your life, I guess. Art never speaks, and I'm glad he doesn't, because truly I don't want to hear a single word he has to say. It only serves to make him scarier though. He mimes his laughter and his screams just like a real horrifying clown would. Art is probably the most vicious, most sick monster on this list. I mean, I can't even describe any of what he does here, and truly I would prefer not to. Know that if you haven't seen the Terrifier movies, and you would like to, these movies are disgusting. People are throwing up in the theaters after seeing the new one, and if it's anything like the first movie, I understand where they're coming from. Subscribe and stick around for way more monster content every single day until Halloween, and then every day after. Number 4. Sam. I have been waiting for a chance to screech about Trick or Treat on this channel. Sam is the main monster of Trick or Treat, an anthology movie collection showing 4 stories of Halloween. And Sam, the little trick-or-treater who appears in all 4 to make sure you follow the rules. Sam, short for Samhain, the Gaelic harvest festival that served as a precursor to modern-day Halloween culture, is the embodiment of the spirit of Halloween. No, not Spirit Halloween, the costume outlet store that's currently occupying that abandoned Target in your local rundown mall. The spirit of Halloween, like the avatar of the entire holiday. He presents himself as an adorable little trick-or-treater, wearing a little sack hood with a big stitched smile, cute little footy pajamas, and a big bag of candy. So what's this guy doing on our list? He's a sweetheart. Well, you don't get to be the avatar of an ancient pagan festival without having a few scary tricks up your big pajama sleeves. Sam might look like a sweet little kid, but inside that sack is razor blades, and he's capable of all manner of sick Halloween tricks to unleash against those who won't play nice, ranging from teleportation, pyrokinesis, shapeshifting, and he even dabbles in a little amateur necromancy. When you get that burlap sack off, under his mask is a disfigured, rather disgusting looking pumpkin head, and from what little we see of him taking damage, it seems like his insides are made of pumpkin as well. Sam's a bit of a sadist when it comes to his work. Seems like he really enjoys himself. He appears to ensure the rules of Halloween are followed properly. He does not take kindly at all to those who don't obey the traditions of Halloween. I'll spell them out for you just so you don't make any mistakes and cross them. Number 1, always give candy to trick-or-treaters. Number 2, always wear a costume. Number 3, never extinguish the flame of a jack-o'-lantern before midnight. And number 4, respect the dead. So long as you follow that, Sam should have no problem with you, and you won't have to deal with his retribution. Number 3, Pennywise. Corylophobia is one of the more common phobias out there, and if you don't already immediately recognize it, it's the fear of clowns. A recent polling of Americans revealed that 42% of all American citizens said that they were terrified of clowns. And here's a little fun game you can play at home. You want proof of this? Go Google clowns right now, pop into images, and then tell me how many of those clowns are funny looking circus clowns, and tell me how many of those clowns look like they're gonna eat you. I think you'll find the ratio is about 3 to 1. Well, we can probably trace a good amount of that well-deserved clown-based anxiety back to Stephen King and his terrifying dancing clown, Pennywise. Now, the more recent It film was a massive mega hit, and I'm sure you saw it, but if you didn't, it is the story of a shape-shifting demonic clown who appears every 27 years to feed off the fear and suffering of the townspeople of Derry, Maine. Now, whether it's the Tim Curry version or the Bill Skarsgård incarnation, both are utterly spine-chilling. Pennywise can take the form of just about anything that he thinks will scare you, from lepers to spiders, but his favorite seems to be that of an old clown. It's unassuming and perfect for luring in his younger victims. Pennywise kind of kickstarted a really unpleasant viral trend in 2016, if you remember that, when there was a string of scary clowns that would just be hanging out. Do you remember that? When we thought that that was the weirdest thing that was ever going to happen to us as the people, was just seeing scary clowns everywhere? We were so innocent back then, so naive. Number 2, Sadako. Oh, we love scary videos here. I mean, that's like the whole bread and butter of what I do is scary videos. I like to think I can handle just about everything thrown my way, but the videotape from The Ring, I think I would give a pass. The mysterious tape in The Ring is said to cause the viewer to die in 7 days after watching, where you'll be hunted by Sadako or Samara, depending on whether or not you watched Ring or The Ring. I'll keep calling her Sadako since that's the real name. Sorry, I like the Ring a lot. The Grudge was great too, but the original Japanese ones are a little bit better, and this pedantic horror elitist is writing this script. Sorry. Sadako is a girl with a latent psychic ability who is drowned in a well by either a doctor or her brother to try and suppress her powers. Well, it didn't work much. And that was a little pun about wells. I'm sorry. Anyway, it didn't work at all, and Sadako returned as a supernatural force to be reckoned with, more powerful than ever, kind of an Obi-Wan Kenobi deal. She uses her powers to create a cursed videotape containing her. Sadako's rules are very simple, dead simple. Do not watch the tape. Whatever you do, not even a second of it. If you do, you're doomed and there is no chance of escape. She'll find you in 7 days, she'll crawl right out of the TV screen, and she will hunt you down. Sadako doesn't say too much. She really just outlines that don't watch this thing in 7 days. There's just something about Sadako or Samara that's inherently terrifying. The long black hair covering her face, that emotionless stance, the way she crawls out of that well. Seeing her crawl out of the TV when I was a kid was probably one of the scariest things I had ever seen at the time. I don't know about the rest of you, but the first time I saw The Ring, I was genuinely convinced that I was also going to get targeted by her for watching that movie. I was more than a little sure that it might not actually be a movie and had been a real thing, which is probably a sign that I was way too young to be watching that sort of thing. So for that sake, I am thankful that it's just a movie and she's just a movie monster. Number 1, The Shape. It felt wrong to not give a shout out to Halloween's biggest monster. The Shape, the boogeyman, Michael Myers himself. First appearing in John Carpenter's genre-codifying 1979 iconic hit Halloween, Myers quickly became the gold standard for horror movie bad guys, almost overnight. Without The Shape, we wouldn't have Jason, Freddy, Ghostface, or any number of the usual suspects with a mask and a knife. Michael's empty stare, lifeless mask, and his chilling synth soundtrack that accompany him are all synonymous with Halloween, quite literally. Now, if you're a fan of the movies, you probably know this, but it's too fun a bit of trivia to not slip in. Michael Myers' iconic emotionless mask is a mask of beloved Canadian actor William Shatner turned inside out and painted white. It helps him boldly go where no lunatic has ever gone before. Now, while the lore of the Halloween movies gets a little bit too complex to discuss here, including multiple retcons, alternate timelines, and reboots, and one bizarre Rob Zombie outing where he's a hobo, all 12 outings of Michael agree that he is evil incarnate. Why does Michael relentlessly stalk and hunt Jamie Lee Curtis? Why does he go on horrific sprees every Halloween? Because he's the boogeyman. Michael rides the line between supernatural and regular natural horror, which makes him all the more terrifying. We never get any insight into why he does what he does. Is he just an obsessive stalker with a crush and an incredible pain tolerance? Or is he possessed by something darker, something malevolent that drives him to do what he does? Is he even human, or does he just look like one? Can he be stopped, or is he a force of nature? Like I said, as the series go on, they do try to answer some of these questions and give some options for his backstory, and some of them are way less cool than others. But the original Michael Myers and the one from the 2018 sequel are the Halloween monster. The idea of someone or something that's been watching you, living in your walls, emerging from the shadows to strike you down, and no one will ever even know why it did it is just horrifying. Michael feels kind of real enough, you know? He strikes those intrusive fears we have every day, like, did I leave the door unlocked? Could someone get in? What was that noise? I'm actually starting to hype myself up a bit here. I gotta stop. I'm freaking myself out. I would genuinely love to talk about the Halloween movies, so please drop a comment down below about what your favorite Michael Myers movie is. I probably like the first one, Rob Zombie's second one, and the 2018 one best.
Starting the list off at number 5, the Migo. No, I'm not talking about the rap trio Migos. I'm talking about an ancient half-wasp, half-lobster that H.P. Lovecraft concocted up in the 1920s in the Lovecraftian mythos. From their first appearance in Lovecraft's 1931 The Whisperer in Darkness, the Migo are huge, pinkish, fungus crustacean-like creatures the size of me. Yeah, these things are massive. From planet Yuggoth, or Pluto as we named it, they arrived on Earth during the Jurassic period. After fighting off attacks from the Elder Things that had landed here, the Migo eventually hid in the northern hemisphere. These creatures prefer to be left alone and in remote mountain ranges. Today they inhabit the Andes, Himalayas, and Appalachians. These creatures prefer to be left alone. They possess a pair of bat-like wings which are used to fly through the fabric of space. The wings don't fly here on Earth as well in our atmosphere, but they're capable of going into a sleep-like state, floating in space until softened and reheated by the sun or another star. The Migo transport humans from Earth to Pluto and back again by removing the subject's living brain and placing it into a brain cylinder where they fly it home for research. I'm sorry, a what? Their technology is extremely advanced to the point that members of the species will casually engage in surgery for relatively trivial reasons, such as adjusting their own vocal organs to become capable of speaking to humans. An elite ancient race, the Migo communicate by telepathy, and their research surrounding the human brain is still unknown. Hold on. So Migo, which translates to Yeti, lives in the mountains, evidence of giant wasp-crab hybrids and fossils. They abduct humans and bring them back to Earth only for research purposes. Yeah, these are aliens. These are aliens, everyone. God, I hope not. And number 4, Nodens. Nodens, aka the Hunter, aka Lord of the Great Abyss, is one of the elder gods in the Cthulhu mythos, first appearing in Lovecraft's The Strange High House in a Mist. A god of journeys and endeavors, Nodens appears as an old man with long white hair and a beard, yet massive, strong, and powerful. He often rides in a chariot formed from a huge seashell, pulled by numerous different types of sea monsters. Nodens is served by the Night Gaunts. These gothic, rubbery, black, faceless gargoyles terrorize the dream world. In Lovecraft's novella The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, Nodens is seen as an archaic god served by the Night Gaunts, and he's depicted as somewhat benevolent, opposing some of Lovecraft's titanous creatures. He mostly hunts down evil creatures in the dreamlands that may get out and terrorize humans. He prefers to hunt the servants of the Great Old Ones because they're usually more intelligent and offer the best sport, but not an act to protect humans necessarily. He has, however, been known to help humans time to time. Quote, "And upon dolphins' backs was balanced a vast crenulate shell, wherein rode the grey and awful form of primal Nodens, Lord of the Great Abyss." I'm just gonna say it. Yeah, this guy's Poseidon, right? I mean, the really old but really powerful thing, the god of the sea, helping humans but not really helping humans. Safe to say that this guy's either Ariel's father or a merman. Come on, he's even got a trident. Number 3, Boö-Krug. Boö-Krug is the lake-dwelling god of the semi-amphibian Thuma people, or voiceless ones, of Ib in the land of Nar. The strange creatures known as the Thuma descended from the moon along with their city of Ib to come to rest on the edge of a great lake in the land of Mar. These are like half frog, half people kind of creatures. Seemed to be a kind race as well. There, they lived in peace for many centuries until men came to colonize Mar. The men in search of precious metals looked at the Thuma and hated them because of their differences and perceived weaknesses. This hatred festered until finally the men sent their warriors to kill all of the Thuma. In a single day of slaughter, the poor creatures were wiped out entirely and their city destroyed. The lizard deities slept beneath the calm waters of the lake until the humans of Sarnath cruelly slaughtered the population of Ib and stole the god's effigy. The deity stirred from its rest and swam to the surface, and let's just say he was pissed. Whether Boö-Krug had come to replace the men with his own worshippers or transformed them into Thuma for revenge is still unclear, but the end result was the same: hybrids. After the destruction of the men in their city, the deities slithered back down to the depths of the thick black lake where it rests to this day. Every year the Thuma people pray and sacrifice to the deity as the waters of the surface become stirred and choppy. I just saw a video the other day of people hand feeding the lake so that the monsters don't end up getting hungry and ravenously eating the town. Yeah, is this a thing? Apparently cities that border water do this a lot. I don't know. Number 2, Mother Hydra. A colossal deep one. Mother Hydra is an enormous humanoid creature with a fish-like face, flapping gills, and slippery scaly skin. She, alongside Father Dagon and great Cthulhu himself, form the holy trinity of the Deep Ones, all being gods of the aquatic race. Hydra and her partner Dagon have been entrusted by Cthulhu with the guardianship of his daughter Cthyla, if anything should happen to him. His daughter, aka the Kraken, is a power not to be messed with. First appearing in Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth, Mother Hydra was one of the Foundation's targets during Project X in 1980. The operations plan was to destroy these aquatic gods using atomic weapons, though unsuccessful as she was able to escape the destruction of the Deep One's city along with Dagon and Cthyla. Lovecraft describes the Deep Ones as a race of undersea dwelling humanoids whose preferred habitat is the bed of the ocean. I would describe them as an 8-story Pirates of the Caribbean antagonist. However, despite being primarily marine creatures, they can surface and survive on land for extended periods of time. Isn't that lovely? And terrifying. Though tied to the ocean, all Deep Ones are immortal. They don't die, except by accident or violence. And they don't grow old either, and they can grow to a massive size. How would one of these things die by accident? Almost every major culture throughout history that resides by a sea has talked about a massive creature with numerous tentacles and heads. She is seen in many forms from sea snakes to mermaids. Either way, what do you think? I think this is the same Hydra that the Romans, the Greeks, the Celts have been talking about for thousands of years. What about you? And coming in at our number 1 spot, Spiders of Leng. I chose this next Lovecraftian creature for the number 1 spot due to my own abysmal fear of spiders. Yeah, I said it. I'm scared of spiders, okay? Arachnophobia alert in 5 seconds. The Spiders of Leng, or Leng spiders as they're sometimes known, are sentient cannibalistic creatures which appear in H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, first appearing in the dream quest of unknown Kadath. In ancient times, these spiders controlled the entire plateau of Leng in Earth's dreamlands, until defeat in the Long War with the Men of Leng. These things were almost hunted to extinction and had to retreat to the southern mountains where they live in their nests. There they dwell to this day, ready to prey on any creature foolish enough to venture through the cavernous mountain range. These purple reddish arachnids appear somewhat similar to terrestrial earth spiders, yet of course on a much larger scale. I feel like all these creatures are just much scarier when they're like 150 feet high. For example, the smaller spiders of Leng are the size of a Great Dane dog. Yeah, that's too big. That's way too big. And larger and older Leng spiders of course could tower over an elephant. Yeah, I'm done. No, I'm done. Thank you. If that's not the scariest part, they have an intelligence far higher than that of a regular animal. Imagine elephant-sized spiders trucking to a city near you. I'm calling Oppenheimer, man. They are carnivores and even trap and indulge in cannibalism of other spiders. Finally, some good news. Eat them all up. They are capable of spinning city-sized webs to disembowel their victims. They also possess a venomous bite that paralyzes their next meal, and of course they have the ability to climb literally any surface. Of course they can, yeah. See why this is the number 1 spot? If I saw a Godzilla-sized kraken or a 5-story spider, yeah, I'm going for a swim, that's all I'm saying.
Number 5, the Annihilation Bear. First up on our list is Annihilation Bear. We love the Annihilation Bear. Annihilation was a 2018 cosmic horror flick, and if it slipped through your watch list, and it probably did because this thing was a box office failure, regrettably, please pause this video, open up a new tab to Amazon Prime, rent it, and then come back to me in 115 minutes, okay? I'll wait. Okay, perfect. Welcome back. Pretty good, eh? Should have seen that one in a theater. And how about that one scene with the bear? Okay, for those of you who didn't watch, Annihilation is about a mysterious alien force called the Shimmer that has been expanding from a meteor crash into a remote area outside an army base. Everything affected by the Shimmer is mutating in bizarre, strangely beautiful fractal ways, biological life merging together in ways it shouldn't, like a giant cosmic gumbo. A biology professor and an army veteran named Lena is sent to investigate after her thought-to-be-deceased husband shows up at home mysteriously and starts convulsing violently. She's then joined by a crew of scientists and researchers to explore the Shimmer and unearth its mysteries. Now, if you can remember all the way back to that first paragraph about 15 seconds ago, I mentioned a scene with a bear. In a movie with ridiculously star-studded cast and fantastic performances across the board, the movie is utterly stolen by one horrifying, cosmically monstrous mutant bear. There are no small parts, just small mutated bears. Like any good cosmic horror story, as the protagonists venture deeper into the Shimmer, they start to turn on each other. And one of the heroines ties the others to the chairs, where they're apprehended and hunted by this thing. A rotten, diseased mess of skin, and who knows how many different beings merged into this poor bear. They surmise that the creatures it's killed before have started to become grafted inside of it. We can see a human skull at the side of its head, and even inside the mouth, we can see another human set of teeth. The way this thing sounds, too, the mix of human screams and bear howls, is the kind of thing I'm still thinking about vividly 4 full years after seeing this. Annihilation Bear was barely even in the movie, and yet it sticks with me like a bad dream. Number 4, the xenomorph. One of the most iconic horror movie monsters and a mainstay of pop culture iconography. When you think of an alien, if you don't think of a little gray man with big black peepers, it's very likely you think of the Nostromo's 8th passenger. Is it a little obvious of a choice to be on this list? Maybe. But I don't think I could sleep knowing that I didn't have the xenomorph on the list. It just didn't feel right. Birthed by surrealist Swiss painter and all-around nightmare man, H.R. Giger. By the way, are there any of his paintings behind me right now? Are there any H.R. Giger paintings we can even show on YouTube? Anyway, the xenomorph is the alien in the movies. Giger wanted an alien that looked vaguely human, but armored and protected from all outside forces. He wanted something with no eyes, so you wouldn't be able to tell if it was looking at you, instead having a human skull with empty sockets. If you want a little peek into Giger's mindset, in case his incredibly disconcerting paintings weren't enough, Giger himself had nothing but love for his baby, saying, "I wanted my alien to be a very beautiful thing. A monster isn't something disgusting. It can have a kind of beauty." And I guess he's right. You know, to each their own. There's definitely a real beauty in a constantly salivating, seemingly invincible, completely stone-cold killing machine with acidic blood, 2 sets of jaws, no drive beyond self-preservation, hunger, and procreation, and a penchant for stalking its prey remorselessly. I mean, that's exactly what it says I'm looking for in my Tinder bio. Number 3, the brundlefly. Jeff Goldblum is probably one of Hollywood's most celebrated and beloved weird guys. Everything he does is immediately lovable, and he has got such a friendly, inviting face. Known for fan favorites like Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, it would be just terrible if something ever happened to that warm smile. Well, rest easy, because the real Jeff Goldblum is doing very well for himself these days and nothing has happened to him. But in the 1986 David Cronenberg classic and one of my absolute favorite creature features, we get to see lovable old Jeff slowly molt into a sickening mix of fly, man, and a disgusting wet pile of makeup. Eccentric inventor Seth Brundle has seemingly perfected teleportation technology after working out a few kinks with its inability to read physical tissue. And after a night of poor scientific judgment and desperate to impress a girl, Brundle teleports himself, and it seems like it goes off without a hitch, except for the unnoticed housefly that enters the machine with them. From here, we watch Seth descend painfully slowly into a sloppy abomination. Brundle doesn't just step out of the machine already fly, no. We get to watch the poor guy's skin model, his face fall apart, watch his limbs start to bend the wrong ways until it all culminates with Brundle being reborn as a new species, the brundlefly, which looks less like a man or a fly and a lot more like a complete mess of carapace and wet hairy boils. Now, the original Fly definitely has its moments, and I recommend you check it out. In that one, we watch a man swap his head and his arm for a fly's in a real classic 50s drive-in B-movie kind of way. And it's a ton of fun. Vincent Price is great in it. But it won't ruin your night the way looking at sweet Goldblum turning into the brundlefly will. But hey, they're both absolutely great, but I've got a real preference for the Cronenberg one. Number 2, Pinhead and the Cenobites. Angels to some, demons to others. That's what Pinhead describes himself and his group of cenobites, which is referred to in the scientific community as a cenobium. You're welcome, you learned something today. Unless you're a fan of the films and you're already nodding your head in agreement, you might be asking yourself, what's a cenobite? I have such sights to show you. The cenobites are a group of extra-dimensional beings who exist beyond our understanding, traveling trans-dimensionally in search of further exploring the balance between pain and pleasure. They dress a bit like the goth kids in high school if they all fell through a home hardware. And special shout out goes to the right-hand man Chatterer, the eyeless, toothy-gritting best friend a pain demon could have. Mysterious and utterly disgusting, these seemingly humanoid travelers love nothing more than a good case of suffering. Their leader, Pinhead, gets the name from the hundreds upon hundreds of nails embedded into his skull, but he's not suffering at all. He really enjoys that kind of thing. He's just a friendly-looking guy looking to explore a bit. Can't shame him for that. I can probably shame him, however, for his sadism, treating the human body like plasticine and bending and flaying it further than it should ever go. Half the stuff Pinhead does in these films I could not even begin to describe to you if we are trying to stay friendly within guidelines. The lament configuration is a strange lockbox puzzle that when opened will summon the cenobium to you. Whether or not they take you away to join them on their travels, well, that's not really up to you. That's up to Pinhead and his buddies. Number 1, Mann. Number 1 on our list of the scariest monsters in horror movie, it's Mann. No, just kidding. It'd be funny though, let's do the real one. Number 1, The Thing. The ultimate in alien terror. That's what the poster for John Carpenter's absolutely legendary 1982 cult classic claims, and he was completely right. The Thing is a story about a group of researchers stationed at a complex in Antarctica who find themselves being preyed on by an intergalactic shapeshifter, picking them off one by one, arousing suspicion amongst all these tight-knitted researchers. It was the Among Us of its time, if you will. The titular Thing in question is an extremely hostile, squelching, wet, shape-shifting alien from beyond the stars, capable of assimilating everything in its path, taking its form. We have no idea what the Thing itself even truly looks like, or if it could even be said to have a true form, as the film does sort of imply that it's a microbiotic organism. As in the film, a blood sample alone is enough to detect who the Thing is. When heated, the blood thickens and tries to escape away, suggesting that every cell of the Thing is sentient in some way. The Thing can take whatever form it pleases of its victims, replicating them perfectly, down to their memories, their speech, making it impossible to tell who's telling the truth and who's who they say they are. The Thing has no clear goals, serving only to preserve itself, and it will do anything to survive. Whenever it finds itself alone with a suitable target, it extends its vile tentacles, seizing its victim and becoming it. The Thing goes through several forms during the film, and each one of them are absolutely disgusting. Whenever a part of it severs, the Thing earns its number 1 spot on this list for its legendary practical effects from industry titan Stan Winston, whose series of puppets and maquettes gave us one of the most truly disgusting monsters to ever slop its way across the silver screen. The Thing is something like barbecuing and Bob Dylan. At some point you're gonna get a little older and realize your dad was right about some of the things he told you was good. Absolutely go see The Thing after this video if you haven't before. It will not disappoint you.
Coming in at number 3, we've got SCP-1312. Plenty of folks ask what happened to Site-17, right? But not that many people seem to know about Site-41. As it was under construction, something happened that caused the entire site to be relocated 3 kilometers north, presumably killing anyone present. Either that, or leaving them in such a state that they should be considered lost. Poor bastards. This incomplete site is essentially an alternate terrifying Foundation site. It's occupied by featureless humanoid entities of solid coloration. These awful, uncanny valley apparitions come in 3 varieties: white, black, and orange. Any object or entity foreign to the site will be discovered and dealt with by these humanoids. The white ones appear to take on the role of pseudo-researchers, appearing to perform experiments and take notes concerning the foreign things. The black ones seem to be security, tending to watch over the proceedings and screaming containment breach when a foreign presence is noticed. The orange ones are the D-class in this situation, usually being ordered around by the so-called researchers and interacting directly with the objects of interest. Not satisfied with observing from afar, the Foundation set up an expedition to retrieve some of the reports written by the facsimile folks at this incomplete site. The results are strange, to say the least. It's kind of like if a bunch of children observed the Foundation for a while and decided to make their own little version of it. None of the entries make a whole lot of sense, and most of the time just detail that certain objects must remain locked up because that's the way things are. Whatever happened during construction must have been pretty terrible, eh? Coming in at number 2, SCP-2000. Deus Ex Machina, baby. The god from the machine. Screw up something super royally? Don't know what to do next? All seems lost? Well, fret not. The answer lies within something you probably hadn't even considered, and that's basically what this facility is meant to do. The thing is, the Foundation doesn't really know how they made it, or if they made it, or how exactly it works. But hey, at least it exists. Below Yellowstone Park lies a massive underground facility. Contained here is a massive array of technology and anomalous devices that are meant to basically reset the world in case of an end of the world scenario. The stuff here can do things like reconstruct a huge amount of humans with custom memories, store the entire internet, and back up pretty much all the data on Earth. That is a nice failsafe to have, especially when the world is full of so many potential world-ending anomalies. But the current iteration of the Foundation doesn't know how it came to be, even though it seems as though they had something to do with it. It also seems that this facility has indeed reset the world a few times at this point. So what happened then? Does it have a limited amount of uses? When will the next world-ending scenario happen? Will we be rebuilt the same way, or will everything be totally different? Would anybody be able to differentiate anyways? This SCP brings up a lot of questions, none of which are easily answered. So for now, I guess we should just be glad that some sort of worldwide backup is available. I just wish we knew how it got there. And coming in at number 1, we've got Dr. Mann's proposal. Here's a real doozy to cap off this list. The possibility that all of the SCPs out there were in some way, shape, or form made by the Foundation. Every single one of them, blowing minds and ignoring the laws of reality because of the very organization dedicated to keeping them under wraps. How embarrassing, right? Dr. Mann's proposal posits that at some point, a group of really talented and smart people discovered a largely harmless anomaly. After studying the ways that this path defied Euclidean geometry, they used their discoveries to develop more anomalies. A key that could open any lock was first, then more discoveries came flooding in. The minds behind all of this did so with the best of intentions at first, hoping to someday heal the sick and feed the hungry. But money quickly became an issue, and they became more beholden to their funders over time. The more they interacted with the anomalous, the more warped their minds became, and things got weird fast. Mistakes were made and dangerous anomalies came into being, and over time, anomalies started popping up out of nowhere. Horrible abominations, willing themselves into existence amidst the experiments of mad scientists. If this is the way it all started, I don't see it ending anytime soon. Uh-oh. Well, there you have it. A 5-pack of accidents that the Foundation probably wishes they could erase. Too bad, they gotta deal with their own mistakes. Making beds and sleeping in them and all that jazz. So what'd you think of the list? Did you know that the Foundation was responsible for so much? Were you aware that there's a tag on the SCP Wiki that you can use to find more Foundation-made monsters? What's your favorite man-made SCP? Make sure you let me know down in the comments.